let's do our predictions. But first, we're going to talk about key matchups for the game, Bo Brock. We do it every week at this time. 2 key matchups. Bo, kick us off.
Yeah, it's closing time, at least for the 2023 season on the Bengals Super Bowl window, at least this season. Let's take a look at some key matchups. Let's throw them up here on the screen. We'll just go here. Okay, well, look at this madman. Leki Fotu, the lone survivor, I guess, of the Arizona Cardinals defensive line. He's got to have a big day on Sunday. Not saying just look at, the way he's trending. He's got to maybe buck some trends and be the Cardinals' best interior defensive lineman, because the opportunity is going to be unlike he's ever seen. He's going against Cordell Volson, who might be the worst graded statistic left guard in the NFL. Do we have this graphic here with Leki Fotu and Volson, but I think we need to switch things up. Damon, can we switch them up? Do we have the other graphic of Volson? We don't have it where it's in his place. There's just a turnstile. We don't have that, but we've got Volson is basically that on the offensive line, just giving up 11 pressures. He's given up a sack. He's been brutal in the run game. Joe Burrow, one of the biggest reasons for his struggle is the interior pressure that he's receiving, and Volson's a big part of that, player out of North Dakota State. I think that Leki Fotu, he's got a mismatch here. Can he kind of expose that? It's going to be so important for him and Dante Stills and Eric Banks and the guys that are up on that defensive line to take advantage of this offensive line on the Bengals. And if you look across it, I know they got the big money investment in Orlando Brown Jr. They got the first rounder at the right tackle spot. It was a Jonah Williams. And then, in the interior, I think it's a big weakness for the Bengals.
You can't convince me that's not Greg Braggs of CHGO Volson in that matchup. Step the hell up, Leki Fotu. You've not been good last couple of weeks. You were the lowest graded defensive lineman for the Cardinals against Stills, a 7th rounder, and some dudes off the street. You've been here since March. Let's go, Leki Fotu. Come on now. This is a game you got to take advantage. You got to get it interior pressure. You've been on the team 3 years. This is a game where I'm looking at big, number 95. If he's getting pushed around by this sieve of a Bengals offensive line, I don't know how long it's worth keeping Leki. If you can't beat this interior offensive line, you're Leki Fotu. Why is he on the team? I know that sounds blunt, but
yeah,
you can't beat a guy who's got a 20 grading that's given up, pressures left and right. What did you say? 9? Is it 9? 9 times.
Nine out of 100. 9
not passing. That certainly wouldn't qualify for a passing grade.
His grade is 9.2.
If I see Leki Fotu being pushed around by this kid, if I'm Monty Ossenford, I'm like, I'm pulling a Cooney. Goodbye. You're gone. I don't care if we need numbers on the defensive line.
He's 9.2, just above putting a chair there. A chair might be able to get a 9.2. It might trip you up.
So we're going to stay on the offensive line with this key matchup. How about Hubbard versus Paris Johnson Jr.? Sam Hubbard's been their best pass rusher this year. 2 sacks, 10 pressures. But how about our sweet baby Paris Johnson? Maybe no Will Hernandez. How will that impact his ability to dominate? I think he'll be okay. The 33rd team, which continues to be egregious, did have Paris Johnson Jr. as a B+ first rounder thus far this year. They graded the rookies. He's an A in my heart. 5 pressures allowed, 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, well beyond his years as a right tackle in the NFL. Again, give me the one play this year where he's been embarrassed and has gotten smoked off the edge. You can't name it. You can't. Maybe he's gotten turned around time and time against Micah Parsons, but maybe once in a while. But there has never been a play that I've watched where I've Paris Johnson Jr. has been a liability. And I think he's going to have a nice day against Sam Hubbard. Again, Lou Anaruno's a good defensive coordinator. He got head coaching jobs. He was a finalist by default for this job. But Paris Johnson Jr., DJ Humphries, if the interior offensive line is going to be undermanned this week, both tackles need to step up. DJ Humphries is not on this graphic. He's being paid a premium. He's one of the top players on this team. And then Paris Johnson Jr. gets better every week, a la Joshua Dobbs. So I expect him to do fine. I think Paris Johnson Jr., if you saw the statistic this week, the Cardinals are one of the most successful running teams running to the right side and have the best run rate in the NFL running off of their right tackle. Well, who plays right tackle? The 6th overall pick from Ohio State. Stud. Absolute stud.
Yeah, not to scare you about that. I asked Paris about that stat, and he said a big big props to his guy Will Hernandez. He's
That's
been
not a
setting
good
those up.
sign. I don't
But
like
look,
that.
this is why I wanted to highlight this matchup in particular, because we know about Trey Hendrickson. Of course, he's playing at the right defensive end. If his back is good enough to go come Sunday, and we know about DJ Humphries, and we could highlight who DJ Humphries is trying to block. He's usually got the assignment of the top pass rusher for each and every defense. But this one's key because Hubbard is their best run defender. Like, if you look at his pass rush, I think 2 sacks is nice, is 10 pressures are nice, but for the most part, he's a guy that can slow down the rush game too. And let's just see a couple former Ohio State players in Hubbard and Paris Johnson Jr. and the young buck hopefully get the best of Hubbard, because if he can, and James Conner, and they can establish the run against their best run defender off the edge, I think that's going to go a long way.
Agreed. And Paris Johnson Jr., to me, like, so nimble in space. He's got elite feet and technique for a rookie. Like, some guys come into the NFL and they are overly reliant on their athleticism, their strength, right? Somebody from Ohio State, like, you could be dependent on that because you dominated, a pretty average conference in the Big Ten. He has come here and his technician looks well beyond his years. So I think he's going to have a great opportunity to be able to re-solidify this offensive line, even without Will Hernandez. Like, I think Paris is the kind of player, Bo, where he will say, well, it's time for me to step up for my teammates, and he will.
Yeah. Asking in the chat, who's their war daddy? It's a great question. Obviously, the Cardinals' war daddy is a Kazir White, where I think on that side, it's Trey Hendrickson. I don't think anybody could deny that, their best defensive player, their war daddy over at the Bengals, is Trey Hendrickson, and he could be banged up with a back. Some honorable mentions, I think, as far as the key matchups go. Marco Wilson, Jamar Chase.
We didn't have the heart to put it on a graphic.
It would take a massive spend zone persuasion as far as Marco Wilson and Jamar Chase. It's going to be a collective effort. It really is. Be interesting. I think we might see a little bit more Antonio Hamilton this week. I think he's poised for more playing time than usual with the cuts that they made. And then you've got the safeties out there and JT, and of course, Keitrell Clark, who's saying all the right things today at his locker post-practice. They've got to be fundamentally sound. They can't let any explosive plays. This has been a Bengals team that everything has been underneath. Joe Burrow, heard this stat today, as far as his yards per completion or pass attempt, is like 35th out of 36 quarterbacks. Only DTR has a lower
Seems
yards
bad
per pass attempt. It is bad. So he's just dumping it off. He's throwing it short, and he hasn't had anything down the field. You can't let that change today. We talk about the Bengals in this offense and how putrid it's been. It's given up. They've only scored, just over 12 points per game, 49 points on the season. And you've got, the team that's below them. The only team that's below them is the New York Giants. And the Giants have had one outlier during this entire season. The rest, they've been bad. It was in the second half against the Cardinals. They can't allow that to happen again against this crew. It can't be a get-right game for this offense, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
You got to maul Chase. And if Tyler Boyd beats you underneath, then so be it. You got to tackle. You have to spy Jamar Chase with at least two defensive backs at all times. You get the benefit of no T. Higgins, who, in my opinion, is a 1B to Jamar Chase's 1A. Tyler Boyd's fine. He's a nice possession receiver, and they've got a couple tight ends, and Joe Mixon's fine. But as you mentioned on audio-only podcast, he's not Christian McCaffrey. Right. You ought to be able to hold this team, even with your defense at home. Nick, this has got to be a Nick Rallis game, Bo Brock, because we mentioned it yesterday, that we put on at the end of the year. It's like, this guy is a future head coach. You got to be able to hold this Bengals team to under 20 points. And if you do that, good chance you're going to win at home. But if you let them, to your point, get right, and Burrow gets in a cadence, Jamar Chase is pissed off. They let him go off and yak after yards after catch, yak style. Like, it's going to be a problem, because this Cardinal team, the best version of it is running downhill with a lead. And if you do that against Cincinnati with the mindset they have, very fragile season on the line, they will quit, right? I don't anticipate jumping out to a big lead a la the Giants game and then faltering. I don't think that's going to happen again. Where you can't get to is multiple touchdown deficits, double digits, because the Cardinals are not built that way. So again, play field position, take your points with Matt Prater. I don't want to see the team get cute. Go for two when it's a lopsided score. Like, do what you need to. This game is not going to be won in the first quarter, but it can be lost, especially if the Cardinals' pass protection is shaky with no Will Hernandez. So at this point now, nothing left to do than to talk about the prediction time. Bo Brock, let's get into it. I'll go first. Keep the positivity flowing. I think you guys can hedge a little bit of where I'm leaning toward. The Arizona Cardinals are going to win this game, and they're going to win it behind the offensive star, Joshua Dobbs. I mean, at this point, how can you doubt this young man? Should have had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last week, save for a drop with Zach Ertz. We don't want to talk about that, but I am going to talk about this kid playing better each and every week he's been in Arizona. Exceptional with his decision making. Hasn't even been close to an interception. Like we see Baker Mayfield and some other guys have drop interceptions. Like Dobbs has put the ball for the most part on the money, or it's out of position for anybody to catch. And you talk about the mobility, the RPO, the ability to run. I mean, it's just, you could not ask for anything more from a backup right now. He theoretically, they should be at least 2-2, Bo Brock, on the season behind this kid. And I think he's going to have a nice day. He played the Bengals before. He's got time in terms of being on a roster. He's never started against them, but he's got a familiarity with what they want to do. And again, I think he plays electric at home. He's been really good at home. Hasn't turned the ball over in 3 games. And then we just mentioned it, like Lecky Fotu. We've got it on here by default because this is a graphic template, like defensive star. How about just be a defensive contributor? Don't be a defensive liability, Lecky Fotu. Don't get pushed around by a Bengals interior offensive line that is one of the biggest reasons that they suck ass right now. Be the stalwart of this defensive line that at the end of the day, Cardinal fans can say, yeah, we've got some turnover. We got some guys we're not necessarily sure about. But Lecky Fotu, we drafted him. He's a good player. Maybe he gets a second contract. If 95 is 5 yards down the field making tackles after the line of scrimmage, we're going to have a big problem. Speaking of problem, I mentioned this earlier this week. I'm going to triple down on BJ Ojulari. Is getting a sack this Sunday. First sack of his career. Minimal playing snaps and reps against San Francisco because I don't know if you know this. Cardinals didn't face too many third downs in that game as a defense. He will get chances right now. No Najee Sanders. Cameron Thomas hasn't been good. Dennis Gardeck, and Zaven Collins are going to be the battery off the edge with Victor Dumakaji. I think BJ Ojulari gets home. Book it. If you can bet it on BetMGM, do that. I'm sure it's like plus 1,000. BJ Ojulari gets a sack. The Cardinals are going to win this game. What was my final score? One more time, Damon Dog. Last time with the graphic
24-20.
24-20. The Arizona Cardinals beat the Bengals, moved to 2-3, and are firmly in the mix for a wild card spot.
You thought you were optimistic. Take a look at my prediction sheet here. Bring it up. Cardinals win 26-19. How the hell are they getting there? Well, I like when you just look at kind of the averages as far as what the Bengals put, what they give up, what they put up on offense. This isn't that far off, but I think that this offense gets back on track after just putting up 16 points. Should have been around 23-24. They had 2 touchdown passes from Dobbs, as you mentioned, that they missed out on. They were just drops. But look, this offense, the straw that stirs the drink, it's James Conner. Top 3 in rushing in the NFL, isn't he? He's in the top 5 in rushing yards. He's been an offensive star, not only just for the Cardinals, but across the NFL. He's a guy that just gets things going. It makes things so much easier for Joshua Dobbs and crew when 6 is going. He's been spectacular. If he can stay if he can have a game like he did against Dallas in the last home game against the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, they're going to have a great chance at this thing if they can continue to do it. Can he be the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL like he's been? This is a possibility, right? And then you talk about BJ Ojulari as your X factor. I like as my defensive star. Going out on a limb, but it's not that far off a limb because this is a guy who leads the Arizona Cardinals in total pressures. It's Victor Dumakaji. Remember when we were singing the praises of Victor Dumakaji in the preseason a summer ago? It was against the Cincinnati
Vance Joseph then benched him.
It was against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh, I like that nugget.
Looks a little familiar to the former Duke standout. I think that he gets a lot of opportunity here. He's already got 3 sacks on the season, so it's not crazy. I think Vic is playing at a high level. Obviously, plays with that violence that they like to talk about. Victor Dumakaji, he might approach maybe 2 sacks in this game. I think he's going to be a big player in the pass game, in the run game. I think he's going to get a ton of snaps in that rotation. And then I'm looking for a rebound game from Rondale Moore. He's been far too quiet the last 2 games. Last time he had a big game was against the Dallas Cowboys. He's a game removed from having a quiet game. So,
but he's only averaging 13 yards a game through the air this year. I mean, he's not been a factor in the passing
Yeah,
game.
he hasn't, but he can factor in the run game. He can factor in the pass game. Got to see it from Rondale Moore. That's why he's my X factor.
I love this from Steph or Steven in the chat. Kazir White pick 6. Wouldn't hate that. That to me, defensive touchdown. We haven't had one since week 1. I think would really set the tone and get people excited at State Farm Stadium. Again, like I feel like this is the first time all year, save for maybe the week 1 against the Commanders, where it's like, yeah, we feel really good about this team pulling out a dub. I hope it's not the kiss of death. I don't expect it to be.